A warm welcome. At Hyde Park tonight, we thought of discussing about Sri Lanka's future in the ever-changing global maritime and shipping industry. Of course, we've invited to our studios just the right personality. A gentleman who has had 30 years of experience, not just in shipping and maritime related industries, but also specifically in exports. May I warmly welcome the CEO of the Shippers Academy of Colombo, Mr. Rohan Masakorala.
Thank you, Indeewari.
Good evening and a warm welcome. I think 30 years of experience in this industry. You start primarily in exports and then you have shipping and logistics related industry exposure, and also into trading and sort of like investment shipping, but no qualifications, of course, in the shipping industry, and economist by education.
Yes.
And but you seem to have had so much of, your wings are spread across most industries now. You're also heading the National Export Strategy, the Logistics Advisory Committee for the Export Development Board. With all this, I think we can talk a lot about what Sri Lanka is facing today. Let's start off there.
Yes, actually, yes, I joined the industry in the early 90s into the export industry. I always preferred to get into export industry. Yes, my background was economics and a little bit of marketing. I had a dual degree in marketing also, management marketing. But theoretically, yes, I learned all those subjects. But when I got into the real job market, after I came from United States, I joined export company. And I was serving export company for about 15 years at different capacities. But what made me got into shipping was, exports is directly related to shipping. You can't do exports without shipping, especially in island. And I started learning, reading and arguing as such when I felt that something is not right. So I had to confront the service providers. I worked with freight forwarders, I worked with customs, ports, and I learned an interest very much on the subject, and probably I started reading a lot, getting magazines. So I'm more than qualified, although I don't have academic qualification in shipping. And I took that, it became a passion. So today I like run in a railway, like I still work with the export industry, but I'm kind of a link for them to the logistics industry. And I get involved in policy development with government, and I became the chairman of the Sri Lanka Shippers Council. In the early 90s, I was one of the youngest to become that position at the age of about 29. Then I became the Secretary General for the Asian Shippers Council, and then we also started the Global Shippers Forum in London. I was working with them. So you see, international trade is a spectrum of activities. Shipping and logistics is one part of it. Exports is another part of it. Banking and services sector like insurance is another part of it. So if somebody wants to know, it's a spectrum of things. That is what you told me, that I've got into various things because I've gathered knowledge in the spectrum of areas where I can connect each sector in the overall international trade. So therefore I sit in various places, sometimes representing exporters, sometimes representing logistics companies. I also served on the as a director in the Ports Authority some time back, Ceylon Shipping Corporation, Central Freight Bureau. I held those positions. So yeah, it has been an interesting 30 years, and it has given me a lot of happiness, and I've started become also a journalist like you, writing to the papers.
Certainly we
yeah, so yeah, knowledge helps me a lot. It keeps me going, and I've been working with many governments since 1990s, late 1990s at different levels. I was senior consultant for ports and airports with the president's office for 18 years. So yeah, that exposure has given me global exposure as well as regional exposure as well as the national side of it, to give some input to make Sri Lanka a better place or region a better place.
30 years, 3 decades. I think these 3 decades have been crucial years in the history of Sri Lanka. Different phases, different developments, one different to the other. and you've seen it all, you've been a part of that all. But when you say from exports to shipping to logistics, you wanted to have an understanding of all this. Hence, you start studying, and you've risen through practical, through hands-on experience. But have we done it wrong as a nation? Because we see that there is isolation in exports and the shipping industry, and there doesn't seem to be a connection between these very important industries to an island nation as ours.
Absolutely right. We have missed many buses in terms of, if you put it like that, to become. See, all this mix, what are we talking about? Everybody talks about a Singapore or a Dubai, right? That's my vision too. That is what is our location is all about. It is about the talent of our people, trainable, skilled people. But we have not done our policies right. Our legal systems are way behind the international standards. When I joined the shipping industry, you write a ship was 3,000 TEUs or 20-foot container vessel. Today, it's 23,000 TEU vessels that operate in the oceans. So yes, we have had some growth in some areas, like if you look at the port of Colombo, we have had a growth at some point, continuous growth, but we have sometimes delayed infrastructure projects. We have gone into wrong infrastructure projects. We have not put the legislation right. We have not got into the conventions right. We have not put our national strategies right. Although we have opened up a free economy in 1977, I still feel Sri Lanka is a very much of a protected country. Protectionism is a very high. One reason for that is, I think, during the war.
Protected country in the sense, are we protected in our industries? Is
yeah,
it
a lot of industry, a
protectionism?
lot of protectionism in industries. That is influenced by lobbies and government. So we are not really a free economy in a lot of areas. There are indirect barriers being put by the trade itself, because they've been comfortable working in a country where a war was there for 30 years. And there were not much of foreign investors coming into the country.
So are you saying we're okay with that setting?
That
We've gotten used to it.
We have got used to that, but that doesn't mean we are growing at. That's why we are growing at decimal, poor performance and poor in terms of international confidence, international investments. We are not getting what we should get as a location. So we are not properly opened. Although we talk of a free economy, India is becoming more freer than us now. Vietnam is becoming more freer than us. Right? Dubai is very much free. Singapore, we can't even compare what the environment in Singapore and ours is. There's a lot of protectionism in a lot of industries.
But doesn't that actually also hinder our own industries, from agriculture to other local industries, if we actually open up too much? That's the argument on the other side. Absolutely.
Argument is good in the surface. Who is there benefiting out of this? When you protect an inefficient industry? Few people. Who pays for it? The consumer. Nobody talks about the consumer side. If you can get that phone for a very good price, and you have a local guy who is producing the same thing at 10 times the price, and government wants to protect it, who's losing? You as the consumer will lose. In the surface, yes, we are also producing a car that is totally inefficient, right? And the world is producing something better. Shouldn't our consumers have the right to have a better product at a better price? So the protectionism covers, the protectionists have a nice way of putting things. They put nationalism into the front. Masses won't understand, but end of the day, masses pay for the inefficiencies. You have to give protectionists to start-up industries up to a certain level. If they can't compete globally, right? I'm not talking about national security issues where there are certain national security things. Yes, you protect certain environment where the country has a national security. But in terms of business, right? If you are a trading hub, if you want to be an export hub, if you want to be part of the world economy, you got to be getting into the level playing field of the world. Right? I'm not telling to take subsidies of farmers. Even Europe gives, even Japan gives. I'm not talking about that. But whatever we are in services, we are not allowing certain foreign parties to come and set up their own businesses here. We want agency houses to be promoted, right? Third parties to be promoted. That is not a free economy, right? If you want to be a shipping hub, you have to have international shipping companies present in Sri Lanka.
But when we talk about opening up our economy, it's also essential that we have our economy in such a way where we have an export-led strategy ongoing, where whether it's tangible or services, but we have not gotten there yet.
Let me put it in a different story. A lot of people talk about Singapore. No? Now, Singapore was a mud hole before us. It was a muddy, marshy place, right? Way behind us. We all know the story of Lee Kuan Yew, what he came and told in Sri Lanka, right? What did he do? I'll tell you, I don't want to go to other industries. I'll talk about maritime logistics or maritime finance and energy. These two you will understand what I'm talking of. In 1962, if you go to history, you can Google it and find out, nationalizing of assets. Sri Lanka nationalized or privatized things that was there at that time under the British rule, although we had freedom, but we were still reporting to the Queen. And 1962, before we became a republic, we nationalized a lot of industries. One thing we nationalized was, I'm talking about even the port and also the oil industry. We asked the foreign companies to leave this country. British Petroleum, American Petroleum, I mean, they were the giants of the world. We asked them to leave and we set up Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. I don't have to tell you about the status of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation or the Sapagaskanda refinery, what it is today in global standards, right? We don't have enough capacity to do our own thing even. We import a refinery now after 40 years, 50 years. What happened? Those companies were invited by Mr. Lee Kuan Yew to Singapore. And what did he say? Invest here. We closed it and said, go. They went there, right? Today, Singapore is the world's largest energy refinery for shipping. The bunkering #1, not Middle East. For ships, bunker is oil. Ships bunker is supplied by Singapore. #1 is Singapore, #2 is Dubai, right? We shut the door, they went and started refineries, all those things. The biggest, even the biggest US refineries out of US is located in Singapore. So what happened was Singapore became an energy hub. Not because of Singaporeans, because of foreign direct investments were invited, right? They were way behind us. We were second best economy after Japan at that time, right? So once the energy was being promoted, what happens? The ships started bringing crude oil from Middle East to Singapore for refinery, right? Today also we talk about thousands of ships passing us and going Hambantara. Those ships are mostly energy ships, right? That goes to Singapore from Middle East and they refine. Once refined, those ships again go to the rest of the world, including Sri Lanka, bring the refined petroleum and other products to Sri Lanka. So that is where we first lost our nationalism idea of sending out foreign companies. They went to Singapore, they set up the operation there. With that, shipping became a hub there because all the ships come there. When a ship comes there, they opened up shipping for foreign companies. You come and set up your headquarters here. So they came and set up the headquarters, started giving various services, buying supplies. So the shipping hub grew. So the multiply effect of the energy hub, right? Combine those two together, what happens? You create a financial hub. In our case, we shut down the energy hub, let the foreigners out, and you know what we are left with, right? Nobody is coming to invest here even because we control, we want everything, we can do everything kind of mentality. We have partially liberalized the shipping and logistics sector. We are not allowing foreign companies to even have 51% ownership. So can you transform a country with that kind of internet, and you want to be a global hub?
I think the hub status that we envisage is quite overrated, an overused word in today's context. Absolutely. In Sri Lanka. We want financial to shipping to export hub, but to whom are we going to create this hub in Sri Lanka? We'll talk about all that and much more after this short commercial break at Hyde Park. To stay with us. Welcome back. At Hyde Park, we'd like to talk about growing regional superpowers' interest in Sri Lanka and, of course, world powers' interest in Sri Lanka as a trading hub. Mr. Masakorala, I think you were talking about hub status, what we missed and what Singapore gained out of the lack of long-term visionary strategies.
Yeah.
But here we see that power play in Sri Lanka, a small island nation, but a lot of people are still trying to understand what's going on, because on the news we say China donates a massive vessel, and there is agreements with the USA, be it AXA or SOFA that is not signed, or the Millennium Corporation Agreement, but everyone's talking about the implications. And just very recently we signed a memorandum of understanding with India and Japan, a tripartite agreement for the Colombo East Container Terminal. Are we doing this right?
I think we got it wrong a bit. Starting with, we lost our balance as a neutral country. I would say it's end of the war. I think that created that atmosphere where we had probably less options to go to the West due to other reasons like human rights. As a result, we naturally went towards China, and China gained in a lot of inroads into Sri Lanka's infrastructure, which we all know. I mean.
But is it bad to have China here?
No, I'm not. I'm always saying we must have everybody here. That's the best foreign policy, if I can look at it, is Singapore. Singapore balances all of them. Chinese are there, the US is there, the Europeans are there, the Asians are there. You name it, everybody is there in Singapore. Whereas we went tilted towards one side, and then we are trying to correct it and going towards a tilt on another side. So we kind of swaying a bit as far as what I'm kind of sees. But as you said, yes, Indian Ocean is a key ocean, I think, in this century due to multiple reasons, including the expanding markets, massive markets, consumer markets. Sitting north of us is a 1.3 billion market, which is growing at the fastest economic rate probably in the world, right? After China, now India is picking up. So China is also in Asia. ASEAN is in Asia, right? ASEAN consider, if you combine ASEAN, it's the fourth largest economy in the world. So Asia is, they call it the century of Asia. That means not only the oceans, but now not only the markets, but oceans are becoming important for resources and transportation and connectivity. So obviously all the superpowers in the world would like to have their own say in terms of business and market access, and also safe passage for their own vessels, security, or whatever they want. Mm-hmm. So this is something natural as far as I am kind of seeing it, but there is a power push kind of situation between China and United States, which is open. I mean, look at the trade war right now. It's a very open secret. I mean, there's no issue. They are trying to come up with the best solution for their own economies. So Sri Lanka, as we all know, is a strategic location for shipping transportation, much better than Singapore and Dubai. Truly, it is a much better place.
If we are to do this right, who do we eliminate? Who do we get closer to? And who do we actually engage in a more productive way?
I think we need to engage both parties as well as our neighbor India, because you see, I mean, we export all our exports to Europe and United States. China buys hardly anything from us, right? So if you look at that sense, our important clients are then Europe and USA in that sense for all our export products. Then you look at infrastructure, nobody had money to put into infrastructure. China had the reserves to do that. And China, as a global player, China has scale and ability to support those kinds of infrastructure in the long term. I mean, that's why they would have invested in the Hambantota port, where we couldn't manage it. They will manage it at some point because they have the scale. So having China is a good thing if nobody else was interested at that time in Hambantota port. Whereas United States and other countries were not investing a lot in countries where there were, as far as from their point of view, their human rights, democracy was not in line. They cannot answer to their vote base in those countries who believe in certain standards in human rights and things. They are accountable governments, they are democracies. So they will not invest in countries until law and order is quite acceptable for them. Whereas China, they take decisions not on that basis. There is a government system is completely different. It's autocratic and center can take decisions. They would not really look at human rights of that country. They look at it as that country's problem. But the port is important, yes, they will put money there. So these two kinds of governance systems which we have to understand. So balancing is very important. We need Chinese investment, we need Indian investment, we need Japanese investments to make it a hub. That is how hubs are made with foreign investment.
And what do we need with the United States?
Well, United States also, we need technology, we need market access, we need investments from United States, and if possible a free trade agreement or a bilateral arrangement to get more access to our products to the US market. The United States is still the world's biggest economy.
Does that mean we will have to go into these agreements that there is so much of media hype about? The SOFA agreement, which is set to risk or jeopardize Sri Lanka's sovereignty, a threat to our national interest. These are the lines that go around in media. But of course there have been commitment by the Prime Minister and the government, the President, that these agreements will not be signed without taking it up in Parliament, but we haven't still understood the content of...
Let me put it like this. Sri Lanka has very emotionally way of doing things. I can remember when I was a student in 1987 when President Jayawardeneh tried to solve our war with the Indo-Lanka Peace Accord. We have this what's called the 9 provincial council system came. At that time, people burned the country saying this 9 provincial council system will divide Sri Lanka into 9 countries. I don't know whether you can remember, I can remember. Country was burnt. It started from Peta, went up to the whole country. It was attacked, buses were burnt. Right? JVP took the lead, the SLP joined it and said, today where is the 9 countries? They don't want to even talk of dissolving the 9 provincial councils, the very people who were against it. Right? Then came, look at the GSP plus. When we get the GSP plus, they said we are going to lose our national sovereignty because we were going to comply with the ICCPR rules, right? Rules that European countries say these are good governance, accountability, right? Transparency. Those are most of the things. I was the Secretary General of the Apparel Association. I know details of it. There's nothing that is bad about for the country that what we should be doing, foreigners are telling us to do it. That's the sad story because we are not disciplined nation, right? We are not accountable. We think politicians can be above the law or somebody else can be above the law. So law is in this country is not equal to the citizen. So these things we have to correct it. So people said when the GSP plus came, initially they said this is selling the sovereignty of the country. I don't know, now 4.5 years, another 3 years we will be finishing the GSP plus.
It's more like we haven't actually maximized the benefits that we can take.
We lost $3 billion because of the period we lost the GSP plus. We lost $3 billion to the country. That lost employment, that lost investment. All the business went to Bangladesh and they grew very fast. So it's our leaders having very short-sighted emotional political decisions to arrest the masses who don't read and understand the concepts. They put these things. Now this coming back to SOFA. 1995, everybody knows, Prime Minister also said, I think everybody has heard, there's an agreement on logistics for the US forces. SOFA is basically that, providing certain logistics facilities to US forces. It was signed. Now if anybody can show me one media article questioning Chandrika Kumaratunga, what is this SOFA? No, it was signed. Nobody knew about it even. Nobody talked about it in media. Then I think during last government, Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa extended that under another name and it was signed in 2007 for a 10-year period, again facilitating US logistics. So now it has come to renewal. So the US government has asked the Sri Lankan government, the president, who is in charge of ports and all this safety, security side of it. Now we need to renew it. We would like to have these things included in this. So yesterday I think the Prime Minister explained in Parliament that there is some negotiations. There was a SOFA, right? There was something in 2007. There is not yet anything signed after that. There's a lapse of 2 years. We have not signed a logistics agreement with the United States.
AXA we signed in 2007, renewed in 2017.
Yes.
SOFA is under negotiation. Now that's what everyone is worried about, whether this arrangement to have logistical transfers or access for the United States to Sri Lanka's logistics, will this hamper Sri Lanka's service industry, well, if it didn't, or the security?
If it didn't happen in 95 to now, it's 20, how many years? 20 years, nothing has happened.
But now there is increased interest of these superpowers in Sri Lanka.
Yes, it is. So that doesn't mean that in 1995 superpowers were not interested in Sri Lanka, but after China's involvement more in Sri Lanka infrastructure, obviously the other side also has more interest, because China has a product called the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. The India, Japan and America has a product called the Afro-Asia Corridor. So same thing, it's about transport corridors. So as we said, we are located in such a strategic location. We, like it or not, we fall into that transport corridors. So the superpowers will negotiate with the governments to give them facilities and things like that when their ships are around and all that. So there has to be formal disciplinary way of doing things. Now in this country today, the president still is the executive president, right? He has certain limitations on dissolving parliament or appointing number of people, or he has been restricted on the commissions, 5 commissions. Those are the restrictions, but he still remains the executive president. He remains the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He remains the defense minister. He remains the law and order minister. So for me, it's stupid to ask anybody else other than bring him and ask, sir, what is the exact position of this? That is what the media should be asking.
Are you saying he's accountable?
Absolutely, absolutely. He's holding all these positions, no? Why should we go and ask the housing minister or somebody what is so far, what is extra? Or for that matter, prime minister who is holding the economic affairs, and even the president is the head of state, head of cabinet, in addition to those what I told. So best person the media should ask is, all the media should get together and ask, we want a press conference or a media conference with you. You are the head of state of this country. Please answer these questions. That is all, no? I think he has very clearly told, no, there is nothing being signed that is harmful to the country. And he's very clearly told that, right? So if you can't believe the president, I cannot do much about it. Same with the prime minister. Now he has answered in parliament. Now wasting time with rest of the people and running the country, we are just delaying our economic processes and focusing on wrong things.
But our foreign policy, the government's foreign policy, has certainly not seen the way through these trade wars and power play between foreign countries. The question is whether we have set the tone in our country for a battlefield where superpowers get to, have their trade war. This is in Sri Lanka, fighting for, parts of strategic parts of the country, investments in the country, and have we got what we need for the country to develop in the next 20 to 25 years, or looking at the longer term? Do we have a vision for that rather than trying to appease these superpowers?
We do have a vision. I mean, every government, even President Rajapaksa's government, had a 5-hub strategy. The current government has an Indian Ocean hub strategy, right? So one thing I can tell you is we cannot build a hub by ourselves. How talented we are, how much we are a small compared to we are a size of a municipality in India. Mumbai is 22 million people. That's a Mumbai municipality, right? So we are an extremely small market like Singapore. Now Singapore has 5 million people, out of that 2.5 million are expats. Right? Dubai is a hub, 80% are expats. Right? Foreign companies are present. So if we close the door to foreign companies on one side and say you can't be here and all that, then we can't make our vision right. We can only talk about the vision, but it will not convert into a hub. Right? So we have to understand what is our strength, make use of that strength and get global players to make it a playing field for international trade. Investors come and do part value addition, have factories, reship to different places, keep headquarter offices here so that financial transactions happen. That is how you build a hub. So single-handedly, no country has built a hub. So first we have to understand that. Therefore, all these international so-called superpowers, non-superpowers, more and more countries playing in Sri Lanka will create new job opportunities and our economy will do well. For that we need to have, one thing I agree with you is our regulatory systems are not up to mark. We have not done our job properly. So
right. I think I'd like to talk more on that. We'll take a short commercial break at Hyde Park. To stay with us. Welcome back. At Hyde Park, we're talking to Mr. Rohan Masakorala. In expert in the shipping, maritime and of course export industries. Before we speak about the regulatory matters that you were talking about, I'd like to talk a little about your conference, the Colombo International Conference that is happening from the 1st, 2nd to the 3rd of August. Now, you have several international players who will be participating in this conference, but this is shortly after, obviously, the aftermath of the Easter Sunday attacks. But have you been able to bring together these industry stakeholders to come to Sri Lanka?
Yes, very much. We started actually in January planning, and of course, unfortunately, this terrible tragedy on our people happened on 21/4. But on the 23rd of April, I decided, after talking to a few of my committee members, no, I am not going to cancel because of these terrorists. As far as I am concerned, it's the terrorists who want us to stop all this by killing and destabilizing our economy. Their ambition is to do that. Why should we give in to that? So I decided on that day itself, whether 10 people come or 100 people come or 300 people come, it doesn't matter. I'm going to have this event. And I started working with my team, and I first spoke to all of the speakers whom we had listed from overseas, whether they would come. Immediately all of them said, no problem, we are coming to Sri Lanka. We want to help you. So we got our energy back, and I visited all the foreign embassies who are here while the travel advisories were still on. And the message was taken out, and today I can tell you with a lot of confidence that conference is building up to be a great conference. We'll have about 20 international speakers, foreign delegations coming in from various countries, and we have a full 3 days of conference and port visits, including taking people to Hambantota. This is the first ever logistics conference we are having in Colombo to market Sri Lanka as a destination for international investors and partners. We have had 2 maritime conferences before in Sri Lanka, and I also did 2 in India and Dhaka, Bangladesh, to promote Sri Lanka as a destination. So yes, our duty is to promote the positive side of this country. We talk too much about always the negative side of this country, what is not right, what is not right, what is not right from morning till evening. I hardly see what is right, what is good, what can be done, what is the future for the children, where is the world running to right now, the world of technology. We are in the 5th industrial revolution as far as I am concerned. 4th has been passed, now we are going into the 5th. So world is moving so fast. I think it's unfair by our generations to come if we don't get them prosperity. Prosperity cannot be brought in by negative thinking and always talking negative. There are so much of nice things about this country which we don't talk very much, and I am one of the people who do whatever the people say, stop this conference, it's not going to be a success because we had this bomb. I don't believe in those things. So yes. Talking
about prosperity going forward, let's think like Singapore did several years, decades ago. Let's do a checklist for what Sri Lanka needs to do immediately.
Well, one thing is our people have to start thinking beyond politics. Our main topic from morning till evening is, what as far I observe, is politics. When you put a news channel, 20 minutes of the half an hour is politics, not economic news, not world news. You don't see that. You don't plant the idea of how we should economically benefit like other countries, positive signs of what can be done. I mean, there are good things happening every day, but hardly things are being shown. For example, if you look at apparel industry, it's growing, but hardly business talk about that industry. I come from the rubber industry, it's still growing. We have all the top brands, even Michelin has invested in Sri Lanka, right? Nobody talks about those things. So it's very less things that these things. So first thing is we need to get our mindset right for economic development. Then we must also make sure that our politicians are pushed towards economic reforms, the legal reforms. Our public sector reforms, which we have been asking for, they have been policy-wise announced but not implemented. Why not implemented? Because government doesn't have a strong mandate. So therefore unions and people who want to disrupt try to disrupt it. So we are in a bit of a bad soup in terms of our internally, our own, we sometimes dig our own, whatever you call it, because I see a lot of people criticizing on Facebook and all our own country. How can you do that? How can own country, spit on your own country by saying negative things.
One thing I take away is that our people have a lot of time on Facebook, then they have to develop businesses.
Exactly, exactly. So they're gossiping and challenging somebody rather than so people have to be disciplined, right? People have to know where they want to go. Government also is at totally fault because government doesn't talk to people and explain what they're trying to do. That is why all these questions come. They keep them in suspense, somewhere hanging something, and then people don't know.
We don't have access to information on what's happening, even about these agreements.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree that communication has been absolutely poor. I think the government needs to talk to media more on not thinking media as a partner and a friend of the people and the government. I think that is media's role also, to make these three connected. So government needs to have explanations on why did we give Hambantota to China? Why do you want to go into a free trade agreement with India? Right? Why do we benefit out of GSP plus? Why should we work more with the United States? For what reason? These things are not openly discussed. Then people who have vested interest will come and put something in between virus, and most people tend to go with the virus. That's the normal human behavior. A person like me would never take things on the surface. Whatever any news tell, whether it is CNN or BBC, I will read a bit and understand what this is about. I mean, everything government says can't be bad, everything government says can't be good either. So we as citizens must realize that we need discipline, regulatory systems brought in, so that what do we want as a citizen? Better future, better quality of life, right? And a future for your next generation.
As a citizen, where do you see Sri Lanka?
I have been having mixed feelings.
Short to mid-term, if we start.
Yeah, I have been having mixed feelings because I'm very worried about these things like extremism being talked too much.
Are you saying we should completely drop that off?
We should not talk about racism at all. We should talk about the Sri Lankan identity. If we don't build a Sri Lankan identity as a Sri Lankan or an Indian or anybody has to have a proper identity, and we must accept multiculturalism, we must respect.
At Hyde Park, we have been talking about
I saw that.
Bringing a Sri Lankan identity, but most of our experts, their question is whether Sri Lankans have been taught to think about a Sri Lankan identity.
Not at all. Not at all. That is failure of the government.
Education system.
Absolutely, the education system. Because we all know that English is an important thing, but how much effort are we putting to make the English the linked language? In Singapore, the linked language is English. So workplace, the government service is done by English language, right? Education is done by English language. Whereas in our government service you can't speak to a lot of people in English language, sadly. They are not taking it seriously. The day that a Tamil can talk to a Sinhalese and a Sinhalese can talk to a Muslim and a Muslim can talk to a Sinhalese in the same language, which is the linked language, we will understand each other much better, right? So for prosperity, yes, that's fundamental. People must have peace, security and trust. Without that, foreigners won't come, stability won't happen. So we must throw away this racism and things like that out the window.
What are these reforms and regulations that you want?
No, we need to bring in through the law that, okay, linked language of this country is English. It's very simple. That's the linked language, right? So all the officers must start working in English. That's how you start doing things. The forms can't be 3 forms, right? I can't understand the Tamil form. Tamil man can't understand the Sinhala form, right? Boards, 3 boards everywhere. Why do you want 3 boards? I can have my own identity.
In some places, Arabic boards too.
Yes, exactly. Actually, you can have all those things. See, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. When you go to Singapore, you see all these things. Right?
So are you saying that we should now look at Singapore and take a cue from there?
Not today. I have been telling for the last 20 years because they have adopted some of the best practices. You see, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and his cabinet continuously, even the today's government, his son, has done the same process of good governance in terms of the interest of the people, right? You got to put things right to the people. You can't be dividing people.
At this pace, again, I'll go back to my question, where will you see Sri Lanka?
I still can't tell you that we will be prosperous in 10 years with the current political environment that we have. right? We have ambitions, we have plans, lot of things. All those things will not take off with the current political environment we have. Very divided, they will use anything to come into power.
If the short to mid-term is bleak, the long term is certainly.
I don't want to talk about it, waste of time of talking long term. I mean, I see a lot of opportunity in Asia. I see huge opportunity for Sri Lanka because our neighbor is growing at 6, 7, 8%. That is a market for us. We don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to the United States or China if we capture and service the Indian market. But we have issues with India also. Every time we have fight with India or say something, criticize India, right? We are also part and parcel of that country's history, the religion, everything has come from there. But we again, every time, I must tell you something. Yesterday I was watching the cricket match of the India, New Zealand. Everybody was happy here in the Facebook when India lost. Very sad. I must tell you that, because if I can tell you, Sri Lanka was the last South Asian country qualified to play the semi-final. Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Afghanistanis all would have supported Sri Lanka. We should support India, our neighbor, our partner, South Asia, same culture. But we have something against them. So whether it is ICTA or Peace or East Terminal or whatever, we are against it. We must be friendly with India. It's our biggest neighbor. That is our biggest market, opportunity in the future. It's also a developing country. We have had problems with small part of India, Tamil Nadu, some extremists. That is not India. We have a concept of thinking India is that extremists who are
Maybe we should start with our neighbors at home.
That's what the Indian Prime Minister's policy is, no? He has said neighbors first, Mr. Modi. That's very clear. So we also must reciprocate that. As far as I am concerned, we must not lose opportunities in the next door. Why are we looking at all other countries? China should be even not here close to us. India should have been our biggest partner. India made mistakes also, I am not saying that. But going forward, can you be blaming the past and fighting the past? Or should we go forward with open arms and more open thinking? That is all I am seeing.
I'd also like to touch a little on broad-basing our revenue streams, because we're talking about tourism industry, an industry that fell, plunged after the horrific terrorist attacks. Now, while depending on tourism, most of our remittances come from our foreign workers, those who help our economy by staying overseas. But how can we look at an industry like maritime and shipping? Because this is really the way forward for Sri Lanka as an island nation. This is what you said at the beginning of our discussion.
Exactly. So exports is very important. I mean, exports brings about $17 billion of revenue. That's number one revenue earner. Services exports and merchandise exports. Now that has fallen due to bad policy from a 35% of GDP in 2000. It fell up to 12% or 13% by 2015. Now it has gone back to 17%. Now this is a positive news which nobody talks about, right? It has gone to 17-18%. Apparel exports have gone up, rubber exports have gone up, IT exports have gone up, right? We need much more than this. We are way behind in terms of exports. So for that to go to exports, we need to create that conducive environment for investors to come and set up new products. Now we are stuck with few products. We are diversifying into other products like boat building and fruits and vegetables. So we need to diversify our export basket. That is one thing. Yes, you said tourism, but we cannot give up on tourism. Our country is such a beautiful country. I have not seen a better country. I am not talking about Sri Lanka. It's an amazing place. So we have not made use of it. Thailand can get 25 million. We should look at 25 million. For that we have to put our security right and the systems right, which I think they are putting it right. But have hope on tourism. But tourism, yes, it's a thing that can move up and down due to various reasons. If you have a natural disaster, tourism can move out, right? If you have a terrorist attack, tourism can move out. It happens in Egypt.
So in that case, as a country, shouldn't we also have our other industries in place?
That's what I'm saying. Exports is one. Then maritime and logistics is a key one that I have been always saying. I think I am a strong believer that industry can take out Sri Lanka's poverty, which is the example again in Singapore and Dubai.
Maritime and
shipping, logistics, right? If we put our laws and investment climate right for foreign companies to set up and use our location as the best location for them, they will create the multiplier effect. They will create the jobs. They will market Sri Lanka. We don't have to do it. They will have their MICE events, conferences, all that in Sri Lanka. That's what's happened in Singapore, that's what's happened in Dubai. We have seen it live. What's there to reinvent, it's there. Just that our environment has to be freer for them.
Are we coming back to opening our economy?
Actually, since 1977, we have gone back a bit. So we need to look
So
at it.
you're saying we need to think of a fuller, an open economy rather than an economy that is open in fact, rather than just saying it's an open economy and closing our doors to the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
Mr. Masakorala, I think that's all the time we have at Hyde Park tonight, but thank you very much for sharing your expertise, and all the very best with the upcoming conference too, because you've taken the decision to go ahead with it in troubled times.
Yes, thank you very much, Indeewari. It was great to be at Hyde Park.
Thank you very much. We had with us Mr. Rohan Masakorala, the CEO of the Shippers Academy of Colombo, the Chairman of the Logistics Advisory Committee of the Export Development Board. This is for the National Export Strategy. And of course, a gentleman who has had 30 years of experience in exports, shipping, logistics and related industries. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week at the same time at Hyde Park.